Welcome to Edge of the Rabbit Hole, where tonight we're going to answer the question, what happens when we die? Coming up next. All right, the afterlife. What happens when we die? Welcome to Edge of the Rabbit Hole. I'm Mike Ricksecker, author and ghost story. With me, as always, is Vanessa Hogle, my co-hostess and a psychic medium, remote viewer, all those wonderful things. And then we also have our chat Shananigator, Shana, down in the chat room. So, hey, Vanessa, this is our final episode for 2018. This is it for Edge of the Rabbit Hole for now, for the next couple of weeks.
Yes. Yes. And for those who aren't aware, because Mike and I were just talking about it, this is our final show of 2018. Starting 2019, we will be starting our 4th year.
Yep.
Being on air, whether it was on radio or whether it's on YouTube. Year number 4.
Year number 4. This may actually, I'd have to look at the dates. This may actually be starting year number 4 because we started 3 years ago in December. We had like a couple episodes. The one that kicked it off, just you and me, and then we had Marla on, and then it was the new year. So it may actually be the start of year 4 here. But we could just say January is the start of year 4. And just
because we're badasses like that.
We are.
Well, I'm excited about this, Mike. I truly am. I love it when we can kind of, take the boundaries off of the questions that can come through. And, I love having a guest, but I like it when it's just me and you too, because we jump down that rabbit hole normally, but man, we can really swan dive.
Oh, absolutely. And I think this is a great one to end the year off with, end big. And we're going to start big too. And our first show, January 8th, we're going to have Andrea Perrin on to talk about her new book, which would be absolutely fantastic. But this is a big topic to end 2018 with. And, that's the afterlife. What happens when we die? There's, so many different ideas and thoughts, people that have had near-death experiences that have seen different things, people that have talked to us from the other side. And there's so many different theories and ideas. And, of course, there's religion out there that teaches all sorts of different things. So I'm ready to dive right into this. So.
Me too. I can speak from the near-death experience
standpoint. Go for it.
Considering the fact that before the age of 2, I almost died 4 times.
Right.
Head in a German Shepherd's mouth. Actually, more than that. Head in a German Shepherd's mouth. Cracked my head open. Have scar tissue on my left frontal lobe, right up here from that. That's why I have seizures. I did that on the side of a bed. I drowned in 10 feet of water, and I stuck my head through a 150 gallon fish tank, stuck it clean through it. 4, I guess. I was so young that I don't necessarily remember what happened, especially during the drowning part. I don't really have any recollection of that. But what I can say is that the abilities that I have seem to run in my family to a certain degree. I seem to get the mother load, and I don't think that I was chosen for that. I actually believe, and I've done YouTube videos on this, that I believe that those experiences getting me that much closer to that side and the trauma done to my brain actually opened me up to allow better communication and better interaction.
So you think you touching the other side briefly there is what has helped you to have the abilities that you have with the mediumship and the remote viewing and all that?
Absolutely. And the fact that, it took years for the scar tissue to develop on my brain, so I didn't have to start having seizures till I was in my 20s.
Joe Chandler says, need some bubble wrap for Vanessa.
I know, right? Oh, honey, that ain't even the half of it. The fact that I'm still walking is amazing. Okay. But it took years. It took about 18 years for the scar tissue to build up to a point that I would start having seizures. Well, you're talking about something that's technically altering your brain.
Yeah.
and it's not altering the side that controls impulse and decision making and behavior like the right. It's targeting the left, which I'm not altogether too certain what part of the brain, what that part of the brain controls. But if it has anything to do with perception, problem solving, or opening the lines of communication, it only makes sense because mine's altered forever. And
Absolutely.
this is actually interesting. I just now really thought of this. Is everyone knows that I kind of closed down for a long time when I was young because I was tired of being the creepy girl. I didn't come out of that and decide to kind of come out into the open until well after that scar tissue had developed and things were coming more forcefully and more clearly and everything else. So I can't help but wonder if the two aren't connected. And I'm wondering how many people out there have suffered the same situation and found that their acceptance of what they can't see grows.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of people do. We've had, it sounds like there's a little feedback maybe coming from your end. I don't know if it's your end.
I can't hear it at all.
Okay, I'm hearing a little feedback, but I hope they can't. But yeah, we've had, others on this show like Peter Anthony with near-death experiences, coming out of an accident. It seems like that's, kind of a real key there where you've had some sort of trauma like that. And it's interesting hearing some of the different stories that a lot of people see a light. And I know you're saying you were very young, so you don't necessarily remember all of it. But a lot of people see a light. They might see a tunnel. They might see some stairs. A lot of people see relatives. Some people say they say Jesus. So there's a lot of different accounts of what is possible as you're touching that other side. Some people have talked about, it's almost like a astral projection where they raise up out of their body and they see themselves from above, which is, if anybody's read Campfire Tales Midwest and Feeling the Afterlife, that was the way in which I depicted that person's death, where they were rising up and they could see themselves from above. So there's a lot of these different accounts that are like this, similar to some degree, but all a little bit different too.
True. And when you talk about astral projection and the fact that it is almost raising out of your body and being able to see things around you from a different viewpoint, it makes one wonder if the connection between the two is as simple as that tether that keeps us to our body. Because that's the thing about astral projection, is you have to be able to almost master it without breaking that tether, that spiritual tether to your body, so that you can retract and come back home, so to speak. Well, death would break that tether. Right. So that makes perfect sense to me. Right. And I know when I projected, there are times when the exploration becomes so intense and almost addictive that pulling myself back to that, what I call a meat sack, we all know that, pulling myself back to it seems less than satisfactory.
Right.
So it does make you wonder.
We have some, it does. We have some interesting comments down here in the chat. Amy Bingenheimer says, I looked down on the surgery when having my tonsils out in kindergarten. Interesting. I don't think we do the tonsil surgery anymore, but the fact that she was able to look down during the surgery is interesting.
That makes sense, though, because the anesthesia would allow her to be able to escape.
Right, exactly.
And to view.
Yeah, that doesn't happen for everybody either. I mean, like when I had my surgery earlier this year, I was out and it was just black. It's like one moment I'm in the being wheeled into the operating room, next moment I'm waking up in bed. So nothing. But for some people, they experience that during a surgery, which is interesting. This is from Spooky Dawn. Have you ever had, and we kind of already touched on this, have you ever had an edge of death experience where you knew you were dying and you saw people and ancestors? She says, I did when I gave birth to my son.
Not so much during those experiences, but I have had them come to me when I've been very ill.
Okay.
And a lot of people don't know this. I didn't advertise it or nothing, but about maybe less than a year ago, I got that real bad tummy bug. What do they call that? That norovirus. Here's something y'all need to know. It's public service announcement, peeps. Okay, so pay attention. I did not know that when you get so sick from vomiting and are dehydrated, that when your legs start to cramp because you're that dehydrated, I did not know that is extremely detrimental to your health, and that you're as close to death as you're going to get if you don't get to a hospital. I did not know that. I found that out after the fact. My stupid ass stayed on the couch, okay, because I couldn't walk.
Right.
I dragged myself through the hallway to get to my couch because I had no use of my lower body. And that was bad. But I had visitations at that time, and it's kind of interesting because it's like, are they checking up on me or are they waiting?
Yeah, it's interesting because you hear some interesting stories. Like I was talking with my mother a few weeks ago, and she has finally admitted that she believes in ghosts. It's like I already had an inkling that she did, because she did buy some of the ghost books and all that, and she's like, I have to tell you, I do actually believe. And then she's like, and although he doesn't want to admit it, and he won't ever admit it, your father does too. And I'm like, ooh.
That is awesome.
But she started talking about my grandfather, her father, when he was on his deathbed, and he knew he was going, and he battled cancer for 25 years, and finally, he lasted until he was 90, which was great. But he finally knew he was going, and he started seeing people. Like he saw his grandfather visited him. Now, he had never met his grandfather. His grandfather passed away before he was born, but this guy came in, and he recognized him as family, and they started chatting a little bit apparently, and throughout the conversation came to know that, well, this was his grandfather. So
wow.
So yeah, really, really interesting things.
Well, kind of along the same lines, my step-grandpa, my stepdad's dad, we called him Pop. His wife we called Mom. She passed quite a few years before he did, and he was in hospice. And I had a dream one night, and it was bad. I mean, his hospice was bad. He couldn't walk, couldn't take care of himself, nothing like that. And I had a dream that Mom came to get him, and the phone rung the next morning, and I rolled over out of my bed. This was years ago. I was still in the townhome. That was how long ago this was. And I rolled over, I picked up the phone, and immediately said, Pop's dead. And it was my stepdad letting me know that, yes, in fact, Pop was dead. This is what I remember being told. And so, and it was a hard time. So if I forget some pieces, bear with me. But
it's all right.
Keep in mind, Pop couldn't walk. He couldn't take care of himself. He was bedridden, and in hospice at his house. They found him, the hospice workers found him away from his bed about 8 or 9 feet, through the bedroom door into the hallway, reaching out like he was reaching for somebody. And I'd had a dream the night before that Mama came to get him. You
hear about stories like that where people will start reaching out for somebody or something that they're actually seeing. And of course, there's the Steve Jobs. Oh wow, as he's going. So, hey, there's a $5 super chat here from Andrew Cox. He says, Merry Christmas, Haunted Road Media, and all the Mad Hatters, new and old, LOL. Thank you very much, Andrew. Absolutely appreciate the $5 super chat. We've had a number of comments here down in the chat. So Spooky Dawn commented that she's basically been on her deathbed about 5 times. She says, knowing you're dying is very strange the way you feel. Greg Rinkin says, the first time I nearly died, I saw what I can only describe as another dimension, a dark and dreary one. Interesting. And then Kat Gash. Hey, Kat, how you doing? one of our Haunted Road Media authors there. She asked, do you think that when you are clinically dead, you're then become more receptive to being able to communicate with the dead? And why do you think this happens?
I think now when your body is still functioning, okay? When your body is still functioning via ventilators and everything else, but you're technically clinically dead, I believe that there is a very real possibility that could enhance any type of communication with what we would call the other side, simply because you have been rid of those preconceived notions of what you're supposed to see, what you're supposed to smell, what you're supposed to taste, what you're supposed to hear. So the programming that we go through on a daily basis, a yearly basis, our entire lives based on religion, ethics, the way our families raised us, what their personal beliefs were, all of that is programming. And it's programming for the most part to teach us that doesn't exist, because people are only really comfortable, the masses for the most part, are only really comfortable when they believe that the time of death is a time of rest, and that they can go on to a place and, heaven, whatever they believe that to be, which I understand and I get it, but we're just energy, and you just can't kill it. So it's traveling, yes. You're able to communicate better, yes, and you don't have those preconceived notions programmed in. So I see how that very well could be the case.
Yeah. Judy Wilson says, I've had patients reaching out and also say who they see, like mom or dad. Yep. Pat Kraft says, my mom saw her deceased sister just hours before my mom passed. I always believed her sister came to help her cross. Paul Johnson says, Grandpa was always on a schedule, World War II and fifth grade math teacher. The day he died, he kept talking about angels. He also kept on asking them what they were going to go in what time, scheduled till the end. Okay. Yeah, and that was another thing that my mom was saying that my grandfather had seen. And it was interesting because I guess my aunt had also seen the same thing walking into the room where my grandfather says that he saw an angel sitting on the windowsill. Well, my aunt walking in had seen the same thing. And so so they believe that there was... It
doesn't surprise me at all. It really doesn't. And I don't think it matters what your belief system is. I don't think it matters what your religion is. Any comforting spirit could be considered an angel. So I don't think that you have to be Christian to see that, or Catholic to see that, or whatever. Hell, I saw what can only be described as Pan in my bedroom watching me sleep. If I can admit to that, I ain't knocking anybody else's story.
There you go.
Okay? Ain't knocking.
Also, a lot of people are saying Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays down in the chat, so I want to throw that out there real quick. Yes, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and
absolutely,
whatever you're celebrating this season, enjoy. Yeah, and so and I agree with you. I mean, whatever it is that's sitting on the windowsill that's watching over you. Yes, having been a Catholic, probably absolutely relating it to angels. It's whatever it is. It's apparently a benevolent being. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to throw something out there just because it was just yelled to me.
Okay.
Okay. Let's jump down that rabbit hole.
Let's go for it. What is it?
What if, and this is what they're yelling at me, what if that light that makes them appear angelic is actually their aura, and when we're that close to death or that open, we can just see it better?
Well, I mean, that makes sense to me. I mean, we talk about auras. There's, supposedly aura photography and all that.
I've had it done.
I have too.
A lot.
And people say that they are actually able to see. Some people can't. But yeah, that's interesting that as you're closer to death, that you'd be able to see auras. Sure, if you're able to see all these other people and these beings and what have you, why wouldn't you be able to see auras as well?
Yeah, and I think that would be, I mean, it has to be fairly accurate if they're going to yell it at me, you know. And I mean, I put it in the form of a question. They didn't. They stated that was what it was. So I'm going to go with what they said.
Okay.
But that makes a lot of sense to me, because I can't imagine a time when you would be more open to love and peace and understanding and unity than when you are at your most alone, searching for it. And to me, at the moment of death, that is what it is. And I think that's why these beings or spirits, family members, whatever, are drawn to you, is because it's, for lack of a better way of putting it, it's like, imagine a pack of elephants. When one is ill or when one is hurt, what happens? They all come to you.
Right.
They all come to that injured or hurt one or dying one. They won't leave them. And they're much smarter than we are. They can see far greater things than we can, and they can sense far greater things than we can. And that just, to me, makes a lot of sense, is that at that same time for us, that's what it would be, is those who are now a part of the world that we're entering, flocking to us to welcome us. And we're more open to how they appear because we're not jaded anymore.
Yeah, I would certainly buy into that. I mean, it makes sense to me that, you know, my grandfather's grandfather, who never met him during life, is like, hey, all right, I get to see my, you know, my son's kid finally, you know, or something like that. And come on, you know, sure. I buy into that. Interesting question. Chuck Banks says, I love this topic. Hashtag Death the Final Frontier. Yeah. But question from X Group Homekid. We can start to, you know, dive down more of that rabbit hole of what the afterlife may be like. So question is from X Group Homekid. Do you think that the physical aspects of where you are when you die can affect your afterlife experiences? I think physically, I think the slate is wiped clean there because you don't take your physical body with you into the afterlife. So
does he mean location though?
Like if you die in a hospital as opposed to your house.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that could be. I mean, spirits are hanging around hospitals, spirits are hanging around home. So are you? See, and that's, and we get into that. You know, why are you drawn to one place or another in the afterlife? You know, I don't necessarily think people are trapped. I think they have free will to come and go as they please. Maybe some of them don't realize that.
Some of them need a little help.
Yeah,
some of them need a little help.
And that could be that could be, you know, their spirit, their soul comes out of their body while they're at the hospital, and they don't realize that they can leave the hospital.
True, very true. If they're unaware of their demise, so to speak. And yes, the slate is wiped clean technically, but I do believe that some have a little bit harder road to hoe than, you know, others when it comes to the passing. If it was a violent passing, it might be more difficult. If it was sudden, and I mean instant, it might be more difficult. You know, a head-on collision that you didn't see coming, that you're killed instantly. There would be that area of uncertainty. Now, but keep in mind, they still might come for you, but if you died very quickly, then those preconceived notions haven't erased yet or haven't been diluted out. Because as far as a lot are concerned, when they die in such a fashion, they're not dead.
Well, they don't know that they are. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't know that they are.
Yeah.
And I think that can affect that.
So let's throw this out there. Let's say, I don't know, just you had emphysema, you died suddenly. You know, would your spirit still have some sort of nasty cough, not knowing that you've passed away? And even though there's no physical, you know, issue going on because now you're just energy, does that spirit somehow retain, I have this condition, and perpetuates that?
I think it's very possible. I mean, based on what a lot of spirits that I've had to communicate with and pass their messages along, based on what they've made me feel, that would be very accurate to me. Because sometimes they're making me feel it because they still feel it. Sometimes they're making me feel it because they want to be able to prove who they are beyond a shadow of a doubt. You know, there was absolutely no rhyme or reason to when I was in Edinburgh and I was in the dungeons or whatever it is there. There's no reason in the world that Mr. Boots should have been able to breathe whiskey in my face. But he did.
But he did.
So potent. And I love me some whiskey, y'all. I love it. I don't drink it very often, but if I'm going to have a drink, it's going to be a straight shot of whiskey. That's the kind of gal I am. But that much, that stale, that nasty, embedded into every part of him smell of whiskey was repulsive.
Yeah, and it was just like boom, right in your face.
Right, well, he stood right next to me and breathed it right here.
Oh wow.
And there was nobody around me. Nobody. So there's no rhyme or reason to that. He obviously is not drinking it. He's deceased. But he is able to conjure up that.
Yeah, somehow he's able to manifest the actual odor of it. Yeah, that's interesting.
Exactly.
Interesting how they're able to do that.
Yeah, it's been like 200-300 years.
Yeah, you know, people talk about, you know, smelling cigar smoke and perfume and things like that. And I do believe that to some degree, you know, that the locations will retain some of those odors, you know, so like, you know, people talking about like in an old, I don't know, like in an old lodge or meeting hall or something like that, you know, where they're smelling the cigar smoke. And they have actually shown where those odors can get entrapped into like the wood mantle that's there. And so every once in a while, something will kick off that makes the odor come out of that. But there's other locations where you can't make that assessment that, oh, it's just coming from this old, you know, piece of furniture or this old wood that's there that's able to expel it, that these things still just inadvertently manifest themselves. And so, you know, it's something from the other side that's able to make that manifest.
Exactly. And it could be something as simple as because they're over there and we're over here and we're easier, let's face it, to manipulate, that they're able to manipulate us into believing we smelled that or believing that we tasted that or whatever, you know. So I mean, they got a bag of tricks, y'all. Okay, so don't tell yourself they don't, because they do. They're smarter than you give them credit for. I'll tell you that right now.
They are. They know. I think they know a little bit more than they let on.
They know your fears.
Yeah. Interesting question from Kelly McCarville. Do you think people's beliefs or religion affect what they experience when they pass?
I do.
To a degree.
I think it affects them in the beginning when they first pass.
Yeah, because I think I think a lot of them have fear. Yes. Some of them don't want to move on to wherever it is that we're supposed to go, because they have this fear that religion is ingrained into them. If you go there, well, you weren't such a savory person in life, you know, you're going to be going to hell. And even people that weren't all that bad, if you think about, you know, like the Puritans from, you know, the 1600s, you know, they could look the wrong way at somebody and they're going to hell. So, you know, there's
exactly.
You have that fear ingrained into them. So I think some of them are lingering around because of that.
Well, and you have in certain religious groups, you have like the flagellators that would whip themselves to shreds during the day, all in the name of religion, and then have orgies at night. So talk about dying under conflict. Okay. Right. So I think it bears weight as you pass, depending on what your belief system was. But I'm going to say this, and I know it's not popular, but since when do I care about that? In the 44 years I have spoken to spirits, 44, y'all, okay? Because I'm 46, going to be 47 in March. In the 44 years I've spoken to spirits, in the thousands that I've conversed with, not one has mentioned heaven or hell.
Yeah, I know you've mentioned that before. And, it's, we can get into this a little. And I said in the description, we'll get into some, religious ideas. I grew up Catholic, and I spent some time in a non-denominational church. And so there was always the idea of heaven and hell that was present in my life. And, I've since believed in reincarnation, and it took me a long time to actually, admit that and get to that point. It took meeting Shana to get there, even though there were some things that happened throughout my life that was like, it may have been, something from a past life or whatever. And I always liked the idea. But, now you have conflicting ideas, between these different religions as far as, what happens when we pass on. Different religions have their different ideas of paradise and what that is, and some talk about, we're going to come back into this life as somebody else. So you have all these people talking about how they were some famous person or whatever in a past life. So there's a lot of these different ideas that are on the table. And then, you have, some pop culture that touches on the subject, and it may even be in a humorous way, like the movie Defending Your Life, but
I love that movie.
It's great. But some of the aspects of that, seem like, okay, it kind of makes sense. You end up somewhere, for a little while that you may actually consider like a home, your home. I mean, people always talk about, when you're about to pass away, or when somebody does pass away, they've just gone home or they're going home. I've already put it out there that when I pass away, at my funeral, I want Home Sweet Home by Motley Crue played, because we're supposed to be going home. So what is this home? If it's, in those religions with heaven and hell, okay, so I'm guessing heaven there would be the home, and hell would be, well, you're punished and burning forever. But if it's reincarnation, then it's someplace that you go for a while, and kind of hang out there. And I've read some stuff from Dolores Cannon, who would do the past life regressions, and she was getting all kinds of interesting things, not just from past lives here on Earth, but past lives on other planets as aliens, which is kind of really interesting. But then also getting a glimpse from some people as to that in-between place, that place that we would call home. And so, I know we've talked about it here before when we've talked reincarnation. We've talked, the soul group and the soul family. I kind of wonder, okay, when we pass on, and okay, so we go up there, wherever up there is, or out there, or whatever. We meet up with family. Do we meet up with old friends, and we hang out, and I don't know, we party for a while or whatever, until it becomes some point in time where, okay, well, it's time to go back.
I'll be stomping in somebody's attic just for shits and giggles. I have the best witch laugh in the world. I'll be doing that one in somebody's attic, hide and watch. Plenty of people I would love to haunt if I ever got a chance to do so. But I think that it's, to me, and this is so going to sound strange, what I've always envisioned. I have never shared this before, so this is a first for Haunted Road Media.
Okay.
What I have always envisioned is something along the lines of floating. The most peaceful, relaxing, floating in water that you could possibly imagine, because that's what we come from. That's what we go to. And it's crystal blue and almost gelatinous. without being quite that thick. And it's just, that's our moment of rest and just able to kind of gather our senses. And then we move on to another body.
Well, you don't think, and I'll throw this out there because I've heard people mention this before, or I can't remember if it was out of some movie or whatever it was, but you don't think that that's like the womb of your next mother and the light at the end of the tunnel is you sliding out the birth canal?
It could be. It could be. I'm not certain if it is, but it could be.
I'm not sold on that one just because of all the, because of all the spirits that are still hanging around here. And,
well, and I mean, how would you slide at,
I know.
You can't see it and start to slide out and then say, no, I'm coming back. And then, fuck.
Yeah, those that come back from that, right. They have that near-death experience to come back, right?
What? It's hard to imagine and hard for me to explain because you're not a body. But it's just that ease, that, okay, I'm going to breathe for a minute. I'm going to get my bearings, and then I'm going to do my thing, whether it is, just traveling around and interacting with people that are still on Earth or still, not deceased, or whether it's to be reincarnated. I think it could go either way. But I've just always felt like you almost have this area where you just, that undulating, calm peace, and it sounds really strange. I know.
No, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
We have a $10 super chat from Tom McNicholas. He says, to all the spirits
Tom.
of the holiday. Thank you very much, Tom. Judy Wilson says, yes, Mike, right on. I've had some tell me they didn't think they were good enough to go to heaven. So that's one of the things that we were talking about earlier. Sharon Lane also chimed in earlier. I still can smell my mom's perfume, and she's never been at this house. And that's something I've experienced with my uncle. I always know when my uncle's around because I can smell his aftershave. And I don't use any sort of aftershave. I know it's not from me. I've smelled it both at my apartment that I had in Ohio and now here with Shana. So I know that he comes by to visit from time to time. So...
See, to me, I still can't wrap my brain around the fact that people don't find that comforting.
No, I think it's great. When I smell it, I'm like, oh, hey, Uncle Paul, hey, do you want to sit down and chat for a little bit? I'll try to kind of coax him out a little bit. Hey, let's have a conversation. And I don't know, it kind of lingers for a little bit and then dissipates. And, there's no conversation that's ever really had, but I invite him every time.
Exactly.
So.
And when he can, maybe he will.
Yeah, I thought I caught an image of him one time at my apartment in Ohio. It was just kind of a quick, I was in the kitchen and something caught the corner of my eye and I look and I thought I kind of saw the image of him. And then I did get the that smell of the aftershave. So.
Yeah. It's, I don't know. I don't think that there's any set, this is it, this is what happens to everybody when they pass. I think that I think it changes. I think it can be whatever it needs to be.
It seems like there's a lot of different options. So, some people are still around here. I know I've talked about it before with my grandparents. Like my grandfather hung around for a while, visiting many of us within the family, and of course, especially my grandmother, until my grandmother passed away. And since then, they've gone on. I haven't heard anything out of my grandfather since then. Nothing ever out of my grandmother. Just one time, I had a visitation from them in a dream. So and so I think that was them communicating to me. Basically from like a different plane of existence, because I don't think they were actually physically here, on Earth like he was when he was waiting for my grandmother. I think it was a communication from somewhere else. And so I think the question becomes, okay, what is that somewhere else? Is that heaven? Is that our quote unquote home that we go to, when we pass away? What is that place? And I think that's something that humankind has been trying to wrap their heads around for thousands of years. What is that?
Well, it could be something as simple as telepathy. You know, it really could. I mean, there's no law saying that somebody that is going to communicate with you and they're in spirit and you're not, there's no law saying they got to be in your living room. You know, I mean, for fuck's sake, I mean, I remote view for places all over the world, and I'm communicating with the spirits at the same time the teams are communicating with them, and we're 4,000 miles apart.
Right.
So there's no law saying that it has to be that way. Keep in mind, again, when we talk about dropping those barriers and all those preconceived notions and what we've been taught, and are able to open our minds up, especially after death, telepathy is not a stretch.
Yeah.
It's not a stretch.
I think at that point, that's probably primarily how you would communicate, you know, because physically you don't have a body anymore. So I almost think, sometimes I think it's almost like the movie Ghost, where it takes him a long time to learn how to physically push a little object, and he finally gets it.
Yes.
So I think it's kind of like that, where, you know, when they first pass, they don't know how the mechanics, you know, apropos, since there's nothing mechanical about the spirit world, but how the mechanics of that would work. So Candy Orton,
you bring up a very good point, though. Let's touch base on this real quick.
Hang on, I just want to throw Candy's comment out there real quick. Candy Orton says, I think sometimes they are breaking some kind of rule and they stay quiet so they aren't busted for making contact or something like that. So
you know what? You never know. Could be.
Mm-hmm.
Could be. You never know. But no, you bring up a really good point with that ghost reference, and I wanted to touch base on that real quick. Because, you know, we know that a lot of people, for various reasons, think that if the contact, not so much communication, but contact they have with spirit, if it's forceful, that it's negative. And I want to really stress this super quick. What Mike just said, I want you to think about that, or think about it in another way. Think about somebody who has been in a coma or has been paralyzed, and they're going through therapy to see if they can get their movement back. Imagine the force in their mind trying to make one of their limbs move, and it might be subtle at first, very small, and then it's a big jerk, a big jerky movement. Think about that when you think about spirit interaction. When you don't have a body and you're trying to catch the attention of somebody who does, you might do something as simple as trying to pat them on their shoulder, but you have no idea the level of energy that you're putting behind it in order to get them to feel it. So it might come out, bam, bam, bam.
Yeah, and all of a sudden you feel like you just got slapped, or you end up with like one of those big scratches on you.
Exactly.
You know,
don't assume automatically that it was intentionally malicious. Stop, breathe, collect your thoughts, ask a couple of questions. See if you have any weird smells that are coming along with it. See if you have a weird feeling that isn't associated with what you just felt. Use your noggin.
Yeah, so many times you get this, well, I got scratched, so it must be a demon. It could very well just...
It could be somebody who was mentally not well. It could be somebody who was autistic. It could be somebody who is mute and is trying to get interaction any way they can.
It could just be somebody that's trying to poke out and touch you, and they don't realize that they just scratched you.
Exactly. Treat every spirit that you come into contact with as a potential deceased loved one, and watch how quickly your views on this change.
Yeah, and Shana throws this out in the chat, and I was thinking exactly this as you're talking about this too. She says, what Vanessa was referring to regarding energy reminds me of Molly. She was so strong, where, we're actually going to talk a little bit about it on Inside the Upside Down here coming up after this show, where, Shana was just sitting there, she got the name Molly, and the energy that happened at that moment, because, she felt like she was, grabbed right on the arm, when she got the name, she was like, was it Molly? And then like, boom, she felt like she was grabbed hard. I felt like this, it knocked her basically off the chair. The energy was so strong, it knocked into me. I was going backward. And so, I think it was probably one of those moments where, the spirit of that girl was like, yeah. And just so excited that somebody finally figured out who she was, that, all this happened. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, think about that. Imagine that, it was like I was talking about on the live feed last night. When you're trying to teach people or educate them or put the information out there, and sometimes you feel like you're screaming in an auditorium with a bunch of people that have on headphones. Imagine being a spirit trying to have some interaction, trying to pass along some message, and you're called nasty names.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good when you're living. What the fuck makes you think it's going to feel good when you're dead?
Exactly.
Just say it.
X-Group Home Kid asks, what do people think of phone calls from the decedent at or right after the moment of death? And that people have reported that, where they get a phone call from somebody who's actually just passed. I think it's their energy just reaching out.
I do too. I know that when my ex-husband's father passed, there wasn't a phone call, but this is interesting. He died the day before Christmas Eve, many moons ago, like 39 years ago. My ex-husband was, I think, 7 when he passed. And according to my ex, he died in a fire in Wisconsin. My ex, his mom and his sister were in Oklahoma, and the entire house filled with the smell of smoke.
Oh, wow.
And then they got the call that he was deceased.
Wow. So somehow he was able to transmit this message of,
hey.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, that's not, he didn't call them, but he let them know something was up before they got.
But yeah, he gave them, somehow he was able to transmit this odor of the smoke to them. Now it didn't actually fill with smoke; they just smelled it.
Just smelled it.
Okay. Yeah.
Just smelled it.
So somehow, it's interesting. It seems like somehow at that moment, there's like this charge of energy, because you hear about all the time where, somebody's mother's passed away, and they wake up in the middle of the night, they see their mother or their grandfather, whoever it is, standing at the foot of their bed, and the next morning they find out that person just passed away. So
exactly. Well, and it doesn't have to even be that somebody has died. If people would stop questioning when the odd things happen, they'll start to understand the messages. I've told everybody this before, but when I had the dream about my mother wearing the black outfit with the silver half moon jewelry piece at her neck, and there was no reason in the world for me to be upset or think anything was wrong, and I woke up after that dream crying, flipping the fuck out, called their home, she wasn't there, or called my stepdad, he said she was at work. I called her work, and they had to get her on the phone. My mom was a waitress, y'all. They had to go and get her from her tables and get her on the phone, only for me to find out that she didn't have the outfit in black. She had it in brown, and the half moon, she found out 2 weeks later that she had to go in and have that, what they call the smiley face surgery, to take out part of her thyroid and her parathyroid. They had to cut her ear to ear.
Wow.
Half moon.
Yeah.
Now, that dream, there was no indication that I should have been fearful at all. But I knew enough to listen to what they were telling me and saying, no, find out, because my mom only went to the doctor because I told her to.
Right. So interesting comment from Karen Whitaker. This is back when we were talking about the poking and scratching and all of that. He says, could it also be that they were trying to get through that thick gelatin you were talking about and doesn't know how much strength it takes?
Anything is possible.
Yeah.
Anything is possible. That's actually an extremely good point. Maybe they're trying to break out of that. Maybe that's when, if I'm correct on that, and we'll never know until we're dead, but if they're trying to break out of that, almost like that yoke, so to speak, then they're having to be forceful to do it. And once they can finally communicate is when they can travel. Who knows? That is very possible and an excellent way to look at it. An excellent question.
Spooky says, like the membrane on Stranger Things.
Oh, true.
So that's a good point. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is the inspiration for Inside the Upside Down, by the way. Yeah, I could see that with Stranger Things. Now, let me ask you something, Vanessa, because we are getting down to about the last 10 minutes of the show. So you've said that, and you've said this many times on this show, that in this life, you've accomplished what you need to do, and this is your last rodeo.
I knew you were going to ask me that.
Uh-huh. Had to. So, if this is it for you down here on Earth, where are you going and what are you going to be doing?
This is it for me in a body down here on Earth.
Right. So
I'll be teaching.
You'll be teaching. What do you mean by that?
Basically, I believe that my next step is for those that are like, you know, average Joes like me, in my next go around, not as a living person, but in helping people like me, like Kelly, like anyone who is interested in that, helping them open up, being one of those people that's a guide.
So you're going to be a spirit guide?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And it's not because I'm all that great. It isn't that. I'm just as big of a fuck up as anybody else. But
I can just imagine my next life, and I figure out that you're my spirit guide. I'm like, oh, fuck, it's Vanessa.
I know, right? But I know that everything that I've been through, everything, all of that, all of the shit, all of the horrible stuff, all of the wonderful stuff has made it to where I would be able to do that and do it with a logical mind, an open heart, and a comforting soul. And I believe that that's what this final life has prepared me for. And I did finally break the cycle. I was able to have a child. I was able to bring an amazing human being to this earth.
Now, you don't believe you were able to in your other past lives?
I was never able to.
Okay.
No, I was always deceased before that time came.
Well, you kept getting burned at the stake.
Yeah. Well, I hung. I was burned. I never made it past 21.
Wow.
So,
okay. Yeah,
I've doubled that, more than doubled that.
Well, let me throw an interesting idea off of you. Because this is something that's been entering my head a lot lately. And maybe it's just a great idea for a story that I'm going to write. Hint, hint, hint. Because I think in one, if not maybe more of my past lives, that I've figured some of this stuff out before. And I have left for myself, for one of my future selves, to find something that I discovered and wrote down or archived somewhere, hid it away somewhere, and left it to a future self of me to go find it.
I could totally see that. And I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but as soon as you started talking, I was seeing you on a ship.
Oh, okay. Like
as soon as you started talking.
Like what kind of ship? What era?
They yelled out sailor to me, but that could mean many, many, many different things. That doesn't necessarily mean naval. But it's
could be a pirate.
Quite large. It's quite large, but it's not a cruise ship.
Okay.
But it's like a large, not pirate, but it has that feel to it, that type of I'm going to sail the seas type of situation going on. Everything that they're yelling out right now that has to do with you has to do with water, and it has to do with water that doesn't have land to the north, doesn't have land to the south, but has land to the east and to the west. And so they're saying that you actually need to be going through that water area, and it's like They're saying the stopping at different ports is going to be extremely important to you being able to find what you're looking for. Here's the ironic thing, though. What you're looking for is 3 parts.
Oh, okay.
And you have to put the 3 parts together in order to figure out what the message is. And the message that has been left that you will have is the last message that you need to get in order to basically sum up your life, and that will be it.
All right, interesting.
It's like a quest, but you won't have land to the north, you won't have it to the south, but you'll have it on the east and the west.
That sounds like downright adventure movie-ish. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. Okay, land to the east, so this is like the entire journey, or just that first step?
The entire journey.
Interesting. Okay.
3 separate countries.
3 separate countries. Okay. Shana's saying, you and I, referring to me, have a Captain Zorro witchy type past life together, remember? And this is true. We have had that. And that was one of the things I had pop up in a dream one time that was like, yeah, that totally happens. Really? Yeah. It was really interesting. So, all right, I'll throw this out there real quick. So, this was a dream I had, I don't know, several months ago, maybe a year ago, whatever it was. And it's like, I know that happened. So it was Shana and I, think like medieval times. We did not really look like we do right now. Like she had like this long, real, red hair. And well, I couldn't really see myself, but I know I would have been a little bit different. But so we were in this room, like in this castle. She had like a gown on, and she was basically being accused of witchcraft, and they were going to string her up and do whatever. And, I came there to like save the day. I mean, you're again, kind of, think of adventure movie type of thing. And I almost did, like, there was this rope thing that I guess maybe attached to the chandelier off to the side of the room. I grabbed her, all these people were like around us, kind of like doing the fist, yelling at us. And imagine me kind of like grabbing her, doing like the zip line thing down. And we hit the floor. We go running off down the hall, down this corridor. There was this like bishop guy that was kind of like related to her. It had something to do with her family. And he opens up this trap door in the floor. It's like, okay, you guys go down there. You guys go down there. So we go down there and we make it through like this tunnel under the city. And we come out on the other side. We see like this big castle and everything. It's like, yeah. Crazy, but that's like amazing. Yeah, it's like even if some of it might have been fantastical because it was a dream, I know that we had that in a past life together. Something like that happened to us in a past life. I can totally see it. Yeah. So I don't know if it's that past life that left something behind. I kind of think it was a little bit more modern than medieval times that left something for me to find, but figured out that there are more spiritual things in play here other than religion, that there are these multiple lives going on. I left some sort of information behind for a future self to find. And so thank you for... Well, what if the information isn't something that you have to physically hold, but knowledge that you learn? And how many lives have you had? I don't know. A lot. How many do you think? Because what if 4 lifetimes ago, you left 3 separate things like what I'm seeing. And so that was 4 lifetimes ago. So then on the 5th, 6th, and 7th or whatever, or, 1 lifetime ago, in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, you've come to this point where you guys have come full circle. And then maybe what you were supposed to leave for yourself is all of this knowledge put together, bring it onto Haunted Road Media, changing things up, putting this out there to educate others, and then you go on your adventure. Could be. It's 3 parts. That's all I know, but I'm not seeing 3 physical things. But it's like a puzzle of putting things together. So if in your previous life, you had some of this information, and in the one before that, you had some of the information, and then the one before that, you had a little bit of the information, but you've been able to piece this together and come full circle. That's the puzzle. Yeah. Well, and I do like puzzles. That's why.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I love stuff like this. I mean, anything that has to. Somebody threw in there Oak Island a little bit ago, which, it kind of has
I
that.
would love to go there.
It kind of has a little bit of that thrown in there. And Shana says that dream is why I feel like going to Scotland. Ireland will feel like home. So.
Well, fuck's sake, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, Ireland would be on the east. Ireland would be on the west. England and Scotland would be on the east.
Yeah, so it could be that strip.
Nothing north or south.
Yeah, so it could be that strip. Yep. So there we go. So it's somewhere there.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And I mean, you can take boats all up and down there. You know, hell, they even have ferries. But yeah, you can take ships and everything up and down there.
Well, and maybe that's why the ferries have been reaching out to Shana and I. I know this is getting a little off topic from the afterlife, but it kind of plays into it.
It does.
It could. I mean, what if? Okay, so you have these different supernatural beings like this. Maybe they're a little bit more in tune to what's going on with that spiritual plane, and maybe they recognize our souls as, hey, these are the same souls, whatever our names were before, Mike, Shana now, but whoever we were in the past. Hey, we recognize you. You need to be over here doing this. Maybe that's why, Shana keeps seeing the twinkles and all that stuff. Maybe they're trying to communicate somehow, or at least reach out. Hey, we're here. We're trying to let you know something.
Very well could be. I mean, we all know that I'm called to certain places. I mean, completely called to certain places.
Whoa.
So it doesn't. What is it?
Sharon Lane says, "Hey Mike, I'm Clan Grant on my father's side. Great-great-grandfather. Castle Grant is haunted. By the way, I am also Clan Grant."
Very cool.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
I'm sorry, y'all. I think that's confirmation. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I'm calling dibs on that confirmation.
All right, very cool.
That's what it was. That's pretty fucking cool.
That's pretty cool. All right. And on that note, we need to get wrapping up the show.
Okay.
Because we're past our hour. So, but cool. So we have a lot of stuff to follow up on. Great way to end out the year. So awesome. All right, everybody. So we really do want to thank you for a wonderful 2018 here on Edge of the Rabbit Hole. As we stated at the beginning of the show, and some of you may not have been around at the beginning, this is our last show for 2018. Figured we'd go out with a bang. The next couple Tuesdays are holidays, Christmas and New Year's Day. So we'll be picking back up January 8th. Andrea Perrin will be our first guest of the new year, talking about her new book, A Wonder to Behold. And so we'll be getting into some intergalactic alien stuff. So it'll be pretty cool. So that's what's going on. Let's get to our Super Chat Superstars for the evening. And we could have talked about this for a while.
I know, right?
Yeah. There's so much to talk about with the afterlife and what happens when we die. So thank you guys for all the different questions and comments and everything. Super Chat Superstars Andrew Cox and Tom McNicholas. Thank you both very, very much for your super chats tonight. Let's get into the shout out. So Shana, thank you very much for being our chat Shananigator tonight. I know she was having a little issue there earlier, but kind of par for the course. Blame it on Frontier. So let's see. Joe Chandler, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Dustin Samario, thank you as well. There's Candy Orton. Thank you very much. Always appreciate it. Check out her Variety Multimedia Network. Let's see. Chuck Banks was in the house. Good to see you, Chuck Banks. A new Haunted Road Media author there. Kat Gash was in earlier too, one of our Haunted Road Media authors. Here's Kathy Ciliento. Thanks for joining us this evening. Kelly McCarville, thank you for hanging out with us as well. Sharon Lane, hey, Clan Grant, that's awesome. I'm stoked about that.
That is so cool.
So, I mean, the name Grant is actually in my family quite a bit too. It's like my father's middle name, my grandfather was named that because of the whole Grant family. So, yeah, Ulysses S. Grant was part of all that, like down the road, like second cousin somewhere. So that's pretty cool too. But Yeah, I like the great connections. See, Lonzo Tingle, thank you for joining us this evening. Always good to see some new names in there. Amy Bingenheimer, thank you for joining us as well. There's Diane Hilbert, Haunted Road Media's Fairy Queen. Thanks for joining us tonight. Deb is me 08. Thank you again. There's Charms Paranormal. Thanks for joining us once again. Karen Whitaker, thank you as well. Pat Kraft, Katie Palmer, very cool. Spooky, there's Dawn. Thanks for joining us tonight. Let's see, Judy Wilson, thank you as well. You guys had a lot of great questions. Judy had some in there, some comments and stuff. Betty Lange, thank you as well. Let's see, there's the Hagland. Thank you very much. And thank you all for such a great year. It has really, really been a great ride. Let's see, Beat 3 Airspace, one of our Deep Down the Rabbit Hole Patreon patrons. So yeah, you can check out the Patreon page, which is patreon.com/Haunted Road Media. So we post some extras, some Q&As, behind the scenes footage and all that stuff out there. There's Shana's little buzz thing. You guys will have to check it out, which was pretty funny. So see, Deep Down the Rabbit Hole Patreon patrons. So that's our top tier. It'd be Tom McNicholas, B3 Airspace, Zippy Davis, BD Flint, Pamela Queen, Andrew Cox, and Joe Chandler. Thank you all very, very much for being our Deep Down the Rabbit Hole Patreon patrons and helping to make this a fantastic year for Haunted Road Media. And thank you to all the other Patreon patrons as well. There's Andrew Cox down there. Let's see, Tim Schoen, thanks for hanging out with us again tonight. For JoJo Flowers, thank you as well. A lot of people in the chat this evening. There's Jen, thank you. And Christine Jones, always appreciated. And I'm going to go ahead and scroll all the way back down. There's Shay Carroll, too. And Lily Tooby. All right, let's scroll back down here. Tammy Heitzman, thank you very much. Yeah, Lily Tooby with the Happy Holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Yes, all of those. Thank you. Little Dorrit Lisa, good to see you down there in the chat again. Giovanni Fitzgerald, yes, you have a great 2019 as well. There's Serenable out there in Ireland. Thank you, Serenable.
Wow.
Yeah. Discord Threads, Kelly. Yeah, check out Discord Threads merch. She always has some great stuff. Let's see, Fran Molino's in the house. Yeah, so it's like everybody's here, which is great. Which is great because we didn't have jack for invitations on Facebook.
Well, I told everybody I was going to kick their butt.
Yeah, I know. I was maxed on 50. Shauna seemed to have less than that. And, all the regulars total, all of our regular viewers total more than that. And we try to also, throw out invitations to those that, pop in every once in a while. And it's just 50 doesn't cut it. I don't know how many times we've told Facebook, hey, this isn't enough for invitation, because they're always like, only send to people who are going to show up. Well, all these people are going to show up. Every once in a while, they open it up and we can get like 500 invites out there, which is probably a little bit much, but
Facebook, don't be a hater.
Yeah, no hating. Okay. All right, everybody. We'll go ahead and wrap this up. We have Inside the Upside Down coming up next. Shauna and I are going to review a lot of our investigations and haunted stuff over the past year to kind of close out 2018 on with some highlights, and that'll do it. So hang on. We'll flip this over here in just a couple minutes. Vanessa, it's been real. Starting on year 4.
Yes. Bye, love. Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye. Have a great night.